Welcome to Bent TV. I am Andy McNamara, and today I am joined by Star Lady. Welcome, Star Lady.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I want to talk about your history and some of the great work you've done. Maybe we can sort of start at the very beginning from your work life.
Oh, well, I've been an activist for over 20 years.
Lordy.
Yes, and some of that's been within queer and LGBTIQ rights, animal rights, environmental rights, refugee and asylum seeker issues.
Yes.
I've come from a perspective of, human and environmental rights.
You spread
and
yourself
social
around.
justice, yes.
Can you tell us about your work in the Northern Territory?
I've just returned to Melbourne after living in Alice Springs for 7 years, where I was working in remote Aboriginal communities on doing hairdressing and fashion. It's sort of youth-based social change community development model.
And I guess the thinking of this is, if you, particularly the queer kids, if you confront them directly, they're going to be terrified and run away. But if you do something that's fun, they can share things and be proud of what they're doing.
Yeah, I didn't necessarily, go to the Central Desert to work with LGBTIQ youth or sister girl or brother boys. I went there to work with Indigenous youth and Indigenous communities. I wanted to, be in a position where I could learn about culture, about other ways of living, and about, about Australian, history. And also, I've had a long history of going out and working with Indigenous communities, and it was a place where I felt the most loved and supported. And so it was a place where I felt like I could, shine and, develop my practice and professional career. And
it's great to hear that you were so accepted in some communities that are quite conservative. How did that come about? What's your secret?
Okay, well, I think in the Northern Territory and within Indigenous culture, authenticity is a highly valued way of being. Mm-hmm. People read you there, and they read you if you're being true and you're being real, and all they really want to know is that if you've got a good heart. Right. And if they can see that, then you're accepted. And I think from seeing, maybe people had ideas that weren't most positive around LGBTIQ identities and culture, because it's different within, different cultures.
True.
But people could see that I was a genuine person, and I think that really helped people, begin to be open to LGBTIQ community. You
have moved back to Melbourne now.
Yes.
What work? Let's start with your paid work. What work are you doing now?
I work for the Zoe Bell Gender Collective, which is a transgender and gender diverse youth advocacy role.
Doing,
I work with mainstream and LGBTI human and health services to educate around transgender identities and rights.
Okay, so both...
So it's like an educational role to be able to help people working with transgender and gender diverse youth.
So you're both working with the transgender youth, but also with the general communities or service providers?
Yeah, mostly with service providers, and obviously linking them in with transgender youth and trans and gender diverse youth-led organisations.
For trans people, medical and health service providers, I suspect, know less than nothing about trans people and what they need. What's it like for a trans person trying to find medical and health support?
I mean, I do think there are a few good health practitioners out there, but I think the general standard for transgender and gender diverse people accessing mental health care, or people who may need to be psychologically evaluated in Australia to be able to medically affirm their gender, is appalling. People are highly pathologised, where mental health professionals are looking at transgender and gender diverse identities as there's something inherently wrong.
Right.
with our identities. And I think also there's an incredible amount of power that those mental health professionals have, because you need to go and get approved to medically affirm your gender. Like, you've got to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria. And are you actually going to feel, if you're getting an incredibly poor service and being discriminated or stigmatised within that space, are you going to feel empowered to complain? And so people aren't. And so we need to have massive health reforms around these issues. But I also think that we need to be doing a lot of work within the trans and gender diverse community around rights-based literacy. Like, there are pathways that we can use
Right.
to complain.
Right.
And if we have the capacity to complain, then we should investigate those pathways, including, the Australian Human Rights Commission, the Victorian Equal Opportunity and Human Rights Commission. But we also have medical bodies like APRA, and we also have the Mental Health Complaints Commissioner and the Health Services Complaints Commission. And we need to begin relationships with these organisations and use these pathways. And we need to be educating service providers
Totally.
to support us to complain.
As a young person way out in the suburbs who feels they're trans, they're going to look at their local doctor and think he or she just knows nothing, cannot guide me in any way that is going to be real or authentic, and not know where to go. Where can people start?
I mean, we do have there are a few services, like obviously we have community-based service like VAX Equinox Clinic, and we also have the Monash Gender Dysphoria Clinic, and then we have private clinics like Northside and the Paran Market Clinic. But we also need to be seeing the government funding support, like training,
Right.
training for GPs,
For all GPs.
for mental health practitioners. We need to see within our medical, like universities and education systems, we need to be seeing transgender and gender diverse content that is implemented in part of that, because at the moment it might be you might have half a day, if that, of a 4-year degree
Right.
or longer. And until we start implementing these health modules, transgender and gender diverse health modules, how do we educate our health professionals? One last thing before we go, I would like to see, we've seen things like the Safe Schools Coalition protests, we've seen marriage equality protests. I think we need to see some direct action in regards to transgender and gender diverse health and health outcomes, and we need to come together as a community with our cisgender allies to stand up for our health rights.
Star Lady, thanks so much for being with us tonight. I'm Andy McNamara, you're watching Bent TV.